Hello, this is Jam Master Daniel 96, and I'll be reading an article from comicyears.com, and it's titled Dave Filoni Reveals Most Controversial Part of The Last Jedi Came from George Lucas Himself. And this is written by Joshua M. Patton, and this came out about a week ago. So let's begin. So it starts off with, we've talked about the backlash of The Last Jedi in these pages before, and hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, counting social media, of words been written on the subject, which is obviously true. I mean, it's been a big, talk about on the divide of The Last Jedi, about fans loving it and hating it, or being neutral, or whatever. So back to the article. Naturally, the most passionate fans either believe The Last Jedi is the best film since The Empire Strikes Back, or the worst, which pretty much I just addressed that. Well, whatever one a particular fan hated before The Last Jedi, yet one thing almost all Star Wars fans agree on is that Dave Filoni gets Star Wars. Not only is he the storyteller behind The Clone Wars, Rebels, and The Mandalorian, Filoni is the Obi-Wan to Lucas is Qui-Gon Jinn. That's why it's a bit surprising that Filoni revealed that the most controversial decision in The Last Jedi is something that came from the master George Lucas himself. There are a lot of things The Last Jedi did that displeased fans, from General Leia Organa flying through space with an assistant from the Force to the film ending on the infamous Broom Boy, yet nothing displeases hardcore Star Wars fans more than its treatment of Luke Skywalker. The fact that the fresh-faced farm boy who used to bullseye Womp in his T-16 back home became the jaded, cynical man in the film was unfathomable. As important as Luke Skywalker is both to the story and fans, this was unforgivable. Even Mark Hamill famously had trouble accepting the character's development, the subject of The Director and the Jedi, the documentary on the movie's home release. Yet for all the so-called angry fans at Rian Johnson for Luke's face, the person were they really angry at, as always, is Lucas himself. And then it comes up as with another title in the article, How George Lucas Inspired Luke's Fate in The Last Jedi as told by Dave Filoni. As mentioned above, Dave Filoni is having something of a moment right now. After ending, some might say too soon, Star Wars Rebels in a spectacular fashion, he helped created the biggest Star Wars pop culture moment in years. The Mandalorian and Baby Yoda captured audiences' hearts and imaginations like the original films did so long ago. On top of that, he was able to finally finish his first love, The Clone Wars, bringing Captain Rex and Ahsoka Tano through the war and Order 66, and while some fans can't contain their disappointment of the films, they equally can't stop praising Filoni, calling him Lucas' natural successor. There is no question that the Pittsburgh native takes Star Wars seriously. Filoni didn't just learn from a dynamic filmmaker how to tell visual stories. No, with Lucas, he heard about the intricacies of the Force from the man who has thought about it for longer than any of us. A fan first, Filoni got the rare chance to ask Lucas about the questions that bothered us. One of the biggest has always been, why did the Jedi all go into hiding after Order 66? Dave Filoni tells us that the attitude about the Jedi Order in The Last Jedi is something that George Lucas decided a long time ago. And then here's the thing he tells Deadline about the final scene in the Clone Wars, and here's the quote. I always had in mind an ending that would somehow involve Vader. I thought it was really compelling, and the imagery of the lightsaber and him holding it that spoke so much it also spoke to something that I discussed with George Lucas over the years. As far as the aftermath of the Clone Wars, the reason why we never saw too many Jedi fighting against the Empire is the fact that a lot of them felt that they failed in their goal to protect the Republic, and they were all deceived, and so a lot of them realized that fighting a war maybe isn't the best way and created violence. They set their sabers down. They tried to find different paths to helping people than perhaps, being violent, and so there is an old idea there. So that's the quote from Dave Filoni right there, and then continue on with the article. This is a huge revelation, sure. The real answer is that if the Jedi restarted and fought the Empire, then Luke Skywalker wouldn't have been the one to save everyone, or at least the one to save Darth Vader. Yet good storytellers come up with reasons why they do what they do in their tales, and this reason from Lucas fits very nicely into the framing of The Last Jedi when Luke walks away from it all. George Lucas told a story about how the Jedi strayed from the path of the light side and thought that they didn't need it act like to find their way back to it. The canon stories involving Luke Skywalker after Return of the Jedi show a different Luke than we remember. He is kind, compassionate, and only rarely resorts to violence. His greatest wish was to restart the Jedi Order along with the New Republic. Only his greatest apprentice turned to the dark side because of his failure and ushered in another fascistic dark side power. In trying to recreate the order of the past, he ended up repeating their greatest mistake like many of us. Luke blamed himself and felt the only answer was to walk away because the Jedi only make things worse. And there's a video about, George Lucas's take on the Jedi in the interview, which I'll link the thing down below, which you can check the whole article when I'm done with this video. And continuing on. The first thing Star Wars fans have to understand is that the light side of the Force and the Jedi are not the same thing. In fact, the entire arc of the prequels and the Clone Wars deals with how the Jedi strayed from the path of the light by fighting in Palpatine's war. When promoting The Phantom Menace in 1999, Lucas appeared on The Big Breakfast to talk about the film, which you can see above, which, you could check that video once you're reading the article after this video. In the interview, he compares the Jedi, the heroes of the film, to enforcers in the Mafia. Filoni has also said in the past that the Jedi would often negotiate by essentially placing their lightsaber on the table as an implied threat and forcing a peaceful resolution. The Star Wars philosophy is how certain systems are corrupted by the dark side. The Jedi Order is not immune to it. We also know that Rian Johnson borrowed some ideas from Lucas's original treatment from the Art of the Last Jedi book, and central to Lucas's ideas was that went from being a bright-eyed, useful, full of hope to a broken, bitter old man. The reason Luke turned his back on the galaxy and the Jedi was because, like in the prequels, he felt the institution was not worth saving. The Last Jedi is ostensibly a meditation on failure. As always, Yoda gets the best lines. He says, meaning masters or teachers or simply the older generation, are what they grow beyond. As Palpatine might say, it's ironic because the very rigid and immutable ideas fans had about both the Jedi and Luke Skywalker are the kind of absolutists thinking that Lucas imagined destroyed the Order from within. And then there's a thing that says, remember in The Last Jedi, even Rian Johnson thought Luke was wrong. One thing the Audidius members of the so-called Phantom Menace love to latch onto as an example of Disney and Johnson's hate for Star Wars is a line from its villain. Kylo Ren said that they should let go of the past, kill it if you have to, yet just because he says it doesn't mean that is how Johnson feels about Star Wars. In fact, any objective observer would see that Rian Johnson is as big of a Star Wars nerd as any of us. In fact, he merely adapted Lucas's plans for the sequel trilogy instead of building on it. Luke might have had painted as right in his choice about the Jedi. Instead, Luke recognizes the error of his ways thanks to Rey and Yoda. Instead of rebuilding the Jedi Order as it was, he trusts the real Last Jedi Rey to do it differently. Lucas was always far more interested in the Force than the Jedi, and one not to be a Jedi to follow that path. So even though the seed of the idea came from Lucas, it likely means that Johnson and company see more good in the Jedi Order than their creator does. What do you think about, and then it just asks, what do you think about all this? And that is pretty much the article, and I'll link it down below for you to check out. And my thoughts on it, I thought it was a good read, and thought it was seeing a different perspective than what most people would think, and that's pretty much my thoughts on it. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment what you think down below. What do you think of it? And share this video to spread the word about the channel. And I'll catch you guys next time with another video.